Hello and welcome back to the piano school. Today we're on piece 5 and it looks just like this. You know the drill. You can go to my website, you can download the music, get an email, all this sort of thing when I release new episodes. And today, as always, it's a step up. Last week we had the code. I quite like this one. Has a lot of chords, it keeps going, and it really teaches you to stay even with the timing. However, this week we've got a few more things to focus on. But before we get any further, let's just have a listen to the backing track. You can find all of my backing tracks in my articles for each of these pieces, and I've put a link in the description below so you can get going and get playing as soon as you've downloaded the music. So what's different about For Duty compared to the code? Well, first off, we're no longer in 120 beats per minute. Wait, was it 120? Yes, it was. So it's now no longer in 120, and you can see that by the little crotchet equals 72. It's a slower piece of music, and that's for good reason. We've got a new type of note, at least a new type of note that we're having to deal with while playing, and that's called a semi-quaver. If you have a look in bar 1, you can see a group of them. There are 6 together, and there's 2 lines that signify that it's a semi-quaver. If it was just a quaver, it would just be 1 line going across the top, but as there's 2, it's a semi-quaver, which makes them double as fast. In addition to that, our left hand is now going to be moving just slightly, but it is going to be moving. We're no longer keeping both hands in the same place. The left hand's going on a bit of a walkabout, but we still have to keep an eye on those flats. And finally, we've got something called dynamics. Now, dynamics dictate how soft or quiet you should be playing a piece of music. And at the start, in that first line, you can see that there's a little P. That stands for piano, or piano, and that means quiet. If you have a look at line 2, you've got an F, and that stands for forte, which means loud. A piano used to be called a piano forte because it could go quiet and it could go loud. So, P for quiet, F for loud. In line 4, at the end of it, in that last bar, we've got that sort of greater than symbol, or less than. No, it's greater than. I always get confused. That means to get louder. So you're starting at whatever volume was dictated beforehand, so that was P in line 3, and you're going to get louder until you end up at F, which is on the second page. And I mean, that's pretty much it for dynamics. There's a few more in between, but in just this piece, we've got P for piano, F for loud, and then we've got a crescendo to get a little bit louder. And we will play that and practice that in just a moment. So let's get straight into it. The first line sounds like this. Just like that. Sounds a little bit more complicated than it really is. If you hear that rhythm in the right hand, the challenge will be coming in at the correct point rather than the speed of it, because if you just look at the fingers, it's just going up and down, making sure to include that E flat that I've put in the key signature at the start. So just that first bar, we've got C, and a run up to F and back down to C. Now, as this piece is in 4/4, we want to be counting 4 beats in a bar. We know that first beat, the C, is a dotted crotchet, which lasts for 1.5 beats. 1. The weird thing is you count the 2, 1, 2, because it technically, the C starts on beat 1. So 1 plus 1.5 is 2.5. So you're going 1, 2, and then you'd say and to get you that in-between note, because you could count 1, 2, 3, 4, or if you want quavers and count a little bit quicker, you go 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. When it comes to semi-quavers, you can either just feel it, or you can actually count between the ands as well. You can go 1 E and a, 2 E and a, 3 E and a, 4 E and a. So if we just had crotchets, it would be 1, 2, 3, 4. Quavers, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and semi-quavers, 1 E-ander, 2 E-ander, 3 E-ander, 4 E-ander. It starts to get a little bit quick, but you slow it down before you get up to that sort of pace. So we've got the C, we're going to hold it down until we hear the 2. 1, 2, and then on the and is when our next C comes up for the run. 1, 2, and that's when you could go and a 3 E and a 4. So 1, 2, and a 3 E and a 4. There we go, that actually fits. 1, 2, and a 3 E and a 4. I would suggest maybe not saying it out loud while you do it because it's quite difficult, but if you wanted to write it down, it's quite nice to visualize the rhythm sometimes, just so you get an idea of what's going on. But anyways, that rhythm literally repeats throughout the piece in at least section A. Section A is in both lines 1 and 2 and lines 5 and 6. However, at bar 3, we've got very slight change, and that happens a few times. So let's try and get that rhythm in. So same thing, 1, 2, and a 3 E and a 4. But just before the next beat, just before the next C in bar 4, we've got an upbeat, we've got a D. So the C is no longer being held for a full crotchet at the end of bar 3. It's a quaver, a dotted quaver. So we've got to very quickly sneak in that D. It's going to sound like this. Just before beat 1 comes back in again. So 1, 2, and a 3 E and a 4. But the counting is a little bit difficult there. I'm going to have to slow it down. 1, 2, and a 3 E and a 4 E and it's on the A. It's on the A. I had to practice that. That D, literally you can just sneak it in beforehand. You don't really need to count it quite like I did. Use the counting to get that initial part there. But the D can literally be just before you play the C in bar 4. You'd fall into it. So if I play bars 3 and 4 just in the right hand, it goes 1, 2. It goes dun dun dun. You're just falling into it. The left hand, like I said, does move around. So we've got to make sure that we remember our mnemonics from a previous lesson. So we've got C and G in bar 1, just 1 and 5. Our hand is moving, but the shape stays the same. Then we've got A and E in bar 2, but remember we've got a key signature. We've got B flat, E flat, and A flat. So that means that both A and E are no longer white notes. They're black notes. So we've got C and G for 4 beats. 3, 4 down to A flat and E flat. 2, 3, 4. Now the next one looks a little bit confusing, I won't deny it, because we haven't actually covered what that bottom note is. But if we skip that and go to the last one in that line, so we're on bar 4, we've got G and D if you've used Great Big Dogs from America. Again, a fifth apart, we've got a little finger on G, our thumb on D. If you have a look at where our little finger is on G, that's on the bottom line of the stave. The note in the previous chord, in that bar 3 in the left hand, is just below that line, just below that G we already had, so it makes it an F. And the note above the F in bar 3 is also a C. Again, a fifth apart, little finger on F, thumb on C. So sometimes you don't need to know every single note off by heart, but it's really good to be able to understand the logic behind the notes. So if you've got a line, or a note on the line, you can know that the gap below is just the note below on the piano. So the left hand just goes like this. 1, 2, 3, 4 with C and G, A flat and E flat, 2, 3, 4 and F and C, 2, 3, 4 and G and D. And that repeats for the entirety of the section A's. Just loops around, nice and easy. And then when you come to put hands together, it's going to fit like this. 2, 3, 4, line 1. So you heard I had that D just falling into the C at bar 4. Okay, so line 1 repeats in line 2, also repeats ish in line 5 and ish in line 6. We'll just get to that in a moment. If we jump to section B, we've got a fifth apart in the left hand again. 2, 3, 4. Watch out the flats this time. I'm not going to tell you the notes, but I mean, I guess you can cheat and look at my fingers. Just got to watch. There are 3 flats to figure out. And it just repeats in section B. Those 4 chords just go around twice. Cool. So in the right hand, we've got the same distance apart with the first note. It's still a dotted crotchet, but the notes that come afterwards are no longer semi-quavers, they're just quavers. So you don't need to worry too much about that really fast rhythm. All it's going to go is like this. 1, 2 and 3 and 4 and 1, 2 and 3 and 4 and 1. Try and keep your fingers stuck to the keys. Nice. That's literally section B. Compared to section A, it's a little less complicated, but you do have to watch out for the left-hand changes because you do have those flats involved. If you can, try and learn it so that you don't look at your fingers again. These have a few jumps, but they're not too far away. So that was section A. Section B, again, not too far away. You don't need to look at your fingers. Say, for example, you had to do some massive jumps, then I'd permit you to look at your fingers. Temporarily. Oh, I missed it. But eventually you actually want to be able to do that without looking as well. But that's way off. That's something I need to practice. So let's look at lines 5 and 6. The only things that change are at the end of a line. If you look at the end of line 5, which is bar 20, instead of a C, D, G, like we had at the end of bar 4, we've got to shuffle our thumb down just by 1 note to get B, D, G. Just sounds a little bit nicer. Works. Then if you look at the end of line 6, which is bar 24, we've got a weird set of notes with a squiggly line. So in here, oh, I've just realised, look back at bar 20 with that B, D, G. That's a B because that little symbol before it isn't a sharp, it's not a flat, it's a natural sign. It negates any flats or sharps that came before it, whether it's in the key signature or in the bar. Just in case I haven't mentioned that in the previous episode. Because we've got the same thing in bar 24 in the right hand, we've got that B lower down, then we've got to jump our hand up. That's the biggest movement we've actually had to do with in our right hand. And we've got this chord, G, B, D, G, again with another natural sign for that B in the middle. Now, try and follow the fingers on this, otherwise you can have quite a tough time doing this particular technique. And that technique is what I just did. I'm not playing the notes at the same time, I'm playing them one after the other and holding them down as I go, which creates what's called a spread chord, and that is the squiggly line that's going down the side of that chord. Just like that. So practice, just in the right hand, go from the B with your thumb and jump. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. You might not get it perfect straight away, but don't try introducing the left hand until you're confident with that jump. And also, when you're trying to practice just 2 bars on their own, try and work out what finger you should have had just beforehand. There's no point practicing, say, on that B and using my index finger and then doing the chord, or my little finger and doing the chord, because that's not where my hand ends up the bar beforehand. So always practice exactly where your hand would have been. Makes it easier when you join it all together. So for the last line, we've got a really simple chord. We've got a C in the right hand and a C and a G in the left hand. I don't know why I just gave you the answers, but I'm going to explain this anyway. So we know it's a G because it's at the bottom of the Great Big Dogs from America. So that's played with our thumb, much like the rest of the chords in this piece. Now, if we have a look and we go to the gap just below G, that would be an F. Then after a gap you have a line, so that would be E. So that's the line we can see floating in between. Then below E you've got a gap, which would be D. And then you've got that final line, which is the note that we can see resting on the page. We've got a C. So it's C and G. I know it doesn't look like a C, but it's in the left hand, so it's confusing. C and G together with a C in the right hand. This one... Actually, no. I was going to say this one you're allowed to look, but I'm going to say no again. Because if you think about it, the previous chord is G and D. Our little finger is already on the G, so we can use that as a way to figure out where our hand should go. Right, I should probably play the whole piece, but before I do that, we've got the dynamics to keep an eye on. We've got P for piano, remember? We've got F forte. P stands for quiet, and F stands for loud. We've got the crescendo in line 4 at the end of that. I don't think we've got anything else anywhere. No, we don't. And that crescendo means we're starting at whatever volume we said before, which is P, because that's the last dynamic we saw, which is at the start of section B. And then we get loud to forte, which is at the start of section A at bar 17. So, when you're playing quieter, you're keeping your fingers still on the keys, you're keeping the same rhythm. It's just a little bit more difficult because you've got a little bit more control, but just practice nice and smoothly, nice and quietly. Anyways, here's the whole piece, just on my own. You can find the backing track yourself and play along, and you can hear the piano alongside that. So, for now, it'll just be the piano on its own. There we have it. Sounds just like that. At the crescendo, just make sure that you're gradually increasing, particularly with those quavers. You can't really do much with that dotted crotchet. With the quavers, make sure each note that goes after the other one is louder than the one before it. I think that kind of makes sense. You get my point. Be very careful with the spread chord. That suddenly goes quiet. We've ended that bar at forte. You've got to be really soft with that chord and the final chord as well. Very quiet. You might have noticed I quickly panicked because I was thinking too much about the dynamics and not thinking about where my hand should be. So focus on pitching and where your hand's positioned first, and then the dynamics are decoration but come afterwards once you've got the practice down. So don't forget, you can get this piece of music from my website once you join the school. I'll send you an email, you'll have a download link, nice and easy. In the article, you'll also find the backing tracks. That's at robharveymusic.com, link in the description. And if you're wondering who makes the backing tracks, that would be my brother. He just lives upstairs and he makes some seriously good stuff. So check him out. I've put a link in the description below to his YouTube channel. So stay motivated, keep practicing, and I'll see you in piece 6. See you then.